Hello, everyone. Is it okay to start?
Hello, it's okay.
Good,
Please.
Excellent. Hello and welcome. My name is Florin Zubashku. I'm Europe editor at Science Business. We're a media and communications company based in Brussels, and we're covering R&D policy in Europe. It's a real pleasure to welcome you all today at this webinar to discuss gender equality in European research, innovation, and higher education. I would like to thank the Czech, Lithuanian, Polish, and Slovakian liaison offices for inviting me to moderate this session. It's really a pleasure. Well, what can I say? Of course, it may seem difficult to discuss anything that's not related to Ukraine these days. But since we celebrated International Women's Day only a couple of days ago, I think it's worth reminding ourselves of the huge number of women who are fleeing Ukraine these days. Some of them are university professors and researchers, and we should recognize the sacrifices they're making to protect democratic values in their country and in Europe, which ultimately, I think, underpin Europe's research innovation systems. So just to give you an example, last week I interviewed Olga PolSCA. She's the head of Ukraine's research agency. She's still in Kiev, and during the day she helps with deliveries of supplies to those in need, you know, only to go back in a bunker at night to keep up with emails and calls so she can keep doing her job. So, and really her strength and determination really impressed me. And having said that, I think the context is appropriate because we all should try and defend democratic values, including gender equality in research in every way we can. So, so that's my brief word of introduction. Now, with your permission, I would like to get this debate started. We have around 2 hours together, during which we will have 6 presentations and a roundtable debate. Without further ado, the first presentation is from the European Commission, and it's to learn about what the EU has been doing to promote gender equality in its research programs. And after that, we will hear from institutions in Central and Eastern Europe on their work on promoting gender equality in their countries. So first, I would like to introduce Anne Pepin. She's Senior Policy Officer at the European Commission at DG Research Innovation. So Anne, welcome to this webinar. Tell us, what the Commission has been able to find out from the She Figures reports and what policies are needed to improve gender equality in European research, innovation, and education. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Florin. I'm very pleased to be here with you. The week of International Women's Day, indeed. I think you were expecting Mina Stareva to be here today. Unfortunately, she had a small accident last night. She's fine, but I'm filling up for her last minute. So please bear with me with this presentation. But and I wish, as you said, that this event could have happened under different circumstances. But indeed, it's our responsibility now to ensure full support to Ukrainian researchers, academics, and society as a whole. So I'll try to give you an overview now of what we've been doing in research and innovation at policy level. These last years have been really instrumental in setting the ground and really shaping the policy for gender equality in the new European research area, and increasing the ambition at the level of Europe. So before I go into the policy context, so next slide, please. Let's start with the She Figures. Let's start with some statistics, and you have on this slide a comparison between the EU 27 figures and the figures for each of the 4 countries which are represented today or presenting today or co-organizing this event. So the Czech Republic, Lithuania, Poland, and Slovakia. And you can see already here that there is, even in between these 4 countries, quite some heterogeneity. There's still some good news overall, that at PhD level, we're close to parity in Europe and in almost all of these 4 countries. The Czech Republic is slightly below the EU average. But when we look at more science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, so STEM-related fields and information and communication technology in particular, there the representation of women is much lower, 22.4% at EU level, and even lower in all of these 4 countries, and very low in the Czech Republic and in Lithuania. The overall representation of women among researchers, all fields, all levels, all countries considered, is close to a third, 32.8%. Those 4 countries are above, apart from the Czech Republic, in grade A positions, so full professorships or equivalent. We don't have the figure, unfortunately, in this latest edition of She Figures for the Czech Republic, but it's higher, it's quite different between Lithuania, where it's well above 40% of women in full professorships, and lower in Poland and Slovakia, close to the EU average of 26%. In decision-making position, heads of higher education institutions, close to 24% at EU level. That has increased a little bit in the past years. And there also very different situation in those 4 countries. In scientific boards, leaders, those are very small numbers. So let's look more at the percentage of women among board members, which overall in Europe is 31%. And there it's, apart from Lithuania, that is well above, all 3 other countries are below. And regarding the integration of the gender dimension into scientific publications, there it's still very low at EU average, less than 2%. And Lithuania and is slightly higher. And so, and again, the Czech Republic is slightly below this overall average. So, okay, so I see a message from Marcela. So 15% in 2020. Indeed, these figures, or most of these figures, are from 2018 and were published in November 2021, sorry. And so this is the overall situation. And next slide, please. This edition of She Figures is quite an improvement on the previous edition. Every edition has evolved every 3 years. And in this one, there is the full report itself, but there are also a series of policy briefs on key challenging topics. And you have the list here. So improving the participation, the progression of women in science, institutional culture, research excellence, institutional change, and also a focus on the impact of COVID-19. And I will get back to this, this issue a bit later in the presentation. Policy actions that are tackling gender imbalance in the leadership in research, the integration of the gender dimension in research and innovation, content and training, the STEM fields having a global view of the situation of women in studies and well, more focused on the undergraduate and education level, gender in innovation and intersectionality. So looking at intersection between gender and other social categories and potential grounds for discrimination. So this is new. And what is also new is that there's an interactive website that you can consult in which you have access to country fiches for each of the member states for these 4 countries in particular. So this is the overall picture. And now, next slide. So the policy context. This has been quite a focus in this past years. Since 2012 and the ERA communication, gender equality and gender mainstreaming research has been one of the key priorities with 3 underpinning objectives: gender equality in scientific careers at all levels, gender balance in decision-making position, and the integration of the gender dimension in research and innovation content. So this is taking into account sex, so biological differences and characteristics, and gender socio-cultural aspects in the design, in the carrying out and reporting on the research and innovation. And a global approach for addressing these objectives has been the promotion of institutional change through gender equality plan. This has been quite successful, at least as a catalyzer for improving the situation at the European research area, but there are still persisting inequalities in access to decision-making, in involving the private sectors, in ensuring more inclusiveness at geographical level, but also addressing such issues as gender-based violence and addressing intersectionality. So in the new communication that was published in September 2020, the Commission proposed to develop with member state and stakeholders inclusive gender equality plans that would address these issues. Next slide, please. And this is something that is very much supported by the member states. You may know that in November last year, a new ERA policy framework was adopted by the Council with a council recommendation on a pact for research and innovation in Europe that really sets gender equality, inclusiveness as a principle and value of the European research area. And there were council conclusions on the future governance of the ERA adopted, to which is attached a very important document, which is the ERA policy agenda for 2022 and 2024, in which there is a separate dedicated action on the promotion of gender equality and fostering inclusiveness, taking into account the Ljubljana Declaration on Gender Equality in Research Innovation. So this important declaration was spearheaded by the Slovenian presidency in the last semester and was endorsed by 25 of the 27 member states and by 10 of the associated countries or in the process of associating to Horizon Europe. So, and by the Commission itself. And this declaration laid out some important areas to cover. Next slide, please. So this specific action, which is now the roadmap for member states and associated countries and stakeholders, contains 4 very much interlinked outcome deliverables. This is in the ERA policy agenda, and now the objective is really to convince member states, at least half of them, that these outcome deliverables should be addressed. So the 4 of them, one is very much on the policy coordination mechanism, how to address all aspects of inclusive gender equality plan and policies, and looking at monitoring as well. The second one has a specific focus on gender-based violence, trying to adopt a strategic engagement document that would be endorsed by research performing, research funding organizations, and more authorities. The third one is really on developing the approach for intersectional inclusive gender equality policies. And the fourth one very much focuses on the role that the research funders can play in better integrating the gender dimension in their programs, in the funded projects, and also paying attention to removing gender biases in research assessment. So this is what is our general framework at this stage, and it's very much under construction. There is a structure that is the ERA forum, in which the delivery of this action is being discussed, and this will be discussed until the summer, and then it will be about implementation of these ambitious joint actions for gender equality and inclusiveness. Next slide, please. This builds very much on Horizon Europe and the strengthened provisions that have been introduced in the new framework program. This is enshrined in the legal basis, and this tackles 3 different levels. The first one is at eligibility level, so the gender equality plan eligibility criterion. The second one is in the content of research. Now integrating the gender dimension is a requirement by default, unless a topic says that it is not a requirement in this specific case. And here you have links, and you will have the slides after the presentation on additional information on this, because I will not going into the detail. I'll focus on the first one, but the third level is also gender balance within the funded projects. And the gender balance among researchers is a ranking criterion for proposals with the same score. Another novelty in Horizon Europe is the fact that researchers can self-declare their gender along 3 categories: women, men, and non-binary now. Next slide. So this gender equality plan eligibility criterion, this applies to public bodies, research organization, and higher education institution at this stage. This is enforced this year for call with deadlines this year, and it's for institutions from member state and associated countries. It does not yet apply to a private for-profit institution or for NGOs or civil society organizations, or for organizations of any type that come from third countries that are not associated to Horizon Europe. To do so, next slide, please. There is a form in the application form, but it's also very important that the legal entity appointed representative, so the REAL, fills in this questionnaire that is available on the participant register in the funding and tenders portal. So we've realized that there's a large proportion of organizations still that have not filled this questionnaire. So there will be upcoming trainings really dedicated to the leaders of across Europe. But this is where an organization can fill in the information, and the information that has to be filled, and next slide, please, is whether the organization complies with these 4 process-related mandatory requirements. The fact that the gender equality plan is a public document signed by the top management, published on the organization's website, and of course disseminated through the institution to staff and student if it's a teaching institution. Then of course you need dedicated resource to implement this gender equality plan. It can be through funding to gender equality positions, to earmarking certain positions. Financial and human resources are concerned here. You need to build your gender equality plan, your targets, your actions that you're putting in place, building on a baseline assessment and a follow-up of this baseline assessment that addresses sex and or gender disaggregated data among staff and students if they're in the institution, and to annually report on these, and also to raise awareness, train, build capacity on gender equality issues, in particular on unconscious gender biases. Next slide, please. And we recommend 4 content-related areas. All these building blocks, we call them, were co-designed with stakeholders, with national experts. So these are really the result of a consensus of key areas that should be addressed. So these are 5: work-life balance and organizational culture, gender balance in leadership and decision-making, gender equality in recruitment and career progression, integrating the gender dimension into the content of research and teaching, and measures against gender-based violence, including sexual harassment. Next slide, please. We've already developed and are still developing different activities, different materials to support our organization in complying with these requirements, being ready for the enforcement now this year of this gender equality plan criterion. The gender equality in academia and research tool that we developed with the European Institute for Gender Equality, which was launched in 2016, has undergone several updates, and now there's a really important update that will be soon finished. Probably next month you will have an updated gear tool with additional best practices, more direct link to the requirements that are asked for Horizon Europe. So please keep posted, follow this. And we also launched a pilot European knowledge and support facility on institutional change through gender equality plans, with 4 specific activities that are carried out. The first one was the release of a guidance, a written guidance, with many good practice examples from some of the institutions that are presenting today, and different projects that we have been funding under FP7 Horizon 2020. Some online trainings are delivered to organizations in countries that are less advanced in the uptake of gender equality plan. We've already organized 6 of these, and more are coming. The next one is for Romanian organization on the 25th of March, for Polish organization on the 28th of April, for the 3 Baltic countries on 25th of May, and one for Cyprus on the 3rd of June. In addition to this, we are also developing mutual learning workshops using European University Alliances as test beds, and 4 of these have been taking place, and there are more upcoming. The next one will be on the 28th of March for 3 European University Alliances, Arcus, Utopia, and Ulysses. And we are also in the process of developing a network of national gender equality plan contact points. This is still very much a work in progress, and there will be also support for this network that is planned under Horizon Europe. And finally, many of the Horizon 2020 SWAFs funded gender projects have carried out activities. Here, I'm not listing all the activities of the project, but what I listed here are the organization from these 4 countries that are organizing the event today that are in the SWAFs funded projects. So you see here, University of the Masaryk, the Technological Agency in the Czech Republic, and the Institute of Sociology of the Academy of Sciences. Quite a number of projects there, gender equality plan implementing project, but also, just go back to the slide. Although I'm sure Marcela Linková will be detailing this, the policy network of a national representative, that gender action that is now over, the transnational collaboration between research funders, GenderNet Plus, ERNet Co-Fund, GE Academy, which was a project on training and capacity building, and UNICEF, which is on gender-based violence, and Casper, which worked on potential scenarios for European level awards schemes and certification schemes. Next slide. I'm almost done.
Okay, good.
I'm almost done.
A couple of more minutes, yeah.
Yes, that's right. So in Lithuania, so here you have 3 more gender equality projects and 5 institutions. Next slide. Poland, here you have also 6, I believe, universities and quite a number of gender equality plan implementing project, but also participation in ACT, where the Jagiellonsky University was developing a community of practice on gender equality in Central and Eastern Europe. Next slide, please. And in Slovakia, 5 organizations in 5 different projects. You can see they're implementing gender equality plans, but also at policy level, at national level, through gender action.
Okay.
Next slide. Just
one more minute. Okay.
Yes, I think it's important that the participants know this. We also, inside DGRTD, are launching pilot studies on inclusive intersectional gender equality policies, on the impact of COVID-19 on gender equality in research and innovation, and also an impact study on the impact that imposing or supporting gender equality plans has had on gender equality. Next slide, please. Just a heads up for the opened topics and also actions that are planned under the widening participation and strengthening the European research area work program. 2 projects are now in the grant agreement preparation phase: the Center of Excellence on Inclusive Gender Equality in RNI, and the policy coordination to advance the implementation of the ERA objectives. 2 topics are open: a living lab on gender responsive innovation, and a twinning line scheme to support the implementation of inclusive gender equality plans. And then a gender equality competence facility will be supported, and a prize will be launched for the first year this year to recognize institutions that have most progress in the implementation of the gender equality plan, even if they've started from scratch. and or that have developed most innovative, inclusive gender equality plans. Next slide. That's just a reference to our policy website, where you can find additional information, and that is regularly updated. And I'm done, and I'm be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your presentation. Well, one immediate question that I have is, well, does the Commission have any figures showing how many universities and research organizations have these gender equality plans in place? I think the EUA has some numbers on this, but they're limited to their member universities, and even there the picture is quite uneven. So yeah,
so we have just first preliminary numbers. So among and this was still, I'd say, 2 weeks ago, among institutions that have submitted eligible proposals to Horizon Europe already, there are around 5,500 organizations that have a compliant JEP. There are more organizations that have a gender equality plan. So there's still quite a margin of improvement that is needed here. So there are more efforts that are needed, clearly. But yes, European University Association, the League of European Research Universities, they're really committed to advancing on this. The LERU has published all their member organizations' gender equality plans, for instance. So we can see there's a quite a momentum, a dynamic towards working on the gender equality plan. But I guess the following speakers will develop this.
So the gender equality plans are only being evaluated by the Commission if you know, within Horizon applications. Will there be
it's true
checks beyond that?
So what I didn't detail is that we are not asking the organization to upload their gender equality plan. They just have to fill in the questionnaire, but there will be compliance checks, and we are in the process of really laying the grounds and really developing the methodology to do so. There will be first compliance checks this year, later this year already, and so that's something we're building up right now.
Okay, and the compliance checks will be done after a project is approved, after a grant is signed, or how does that work in practice?
Yes, of course. At this stage, it's something I didn't underline, but I think most, maybe, I'm not sure after all, that most participants here are aware of this. It's an eligibility criterion, but there's an effective tolerance to its enforcement until the grant agreement preparation. So if you do not have a compliant gender equality plan at proposal submission stage, it will not block your submission. It will not influence the evaluation by the reviewers. It will only be checked at the grant agreement preparation phase.
Yeah.
So
okay, well, I have a question related to that. So the gender balance in research teams is a decisive criteria in case of applicants with the same number of points. So
it's the third one. The first one is you have to cover everything that's in the topic description, then your score on excellence, and then your score on innovation, and then the gender balance.
Okay.
Among researchers that are listed in the researchers table. Okay,
so if I understand correctly, if two applicants score equally on all the other dimensions, right? The one who scores better on the gender balance will get the grant, right?
That's right.
And that's something that's it's judged by the evaluators themselves, or who makes that call?
It's a purely mathematical.
Oh, okay, good.
We look at the number of named researcher in the table that each proposal has to fill in.
Okay, good. One final question for you before we move to the other presentations. I want to ask, I know that, for example, the ERC evaluators are shown videos reminding them of unconscious bias at the beginning of each meeting, each evaluation meeting. So
that's briefing on unconscious bias is indeed what the common practice.
Yeah, that's my question. Does that go beyond ERC? That it's a practice, yes, that's implemented across the program?
It is. There's, if it's not showing the actual video, it's linked to the video and different videos. But yes, it is. Mm-hmm. Indeed. There's briefing on unconscious biases for all reviewers. Yes.
Okay. Well, I have a question from our participants here. It's been just sent to me. So, is it foreseen that third countries not associated with Horizon Europe need to provide a gender equality plan?
So. Not yet. What
about in the future?
It might be. I mean, it is on the table right now. We're discussing a bit more about private for-profit organization. Mm-hmm. Although there are really specific measures for the innovation sector under the European Innovation Council. So really some specific measures asking that there be at least 40% women among the second stage. So SMEs and founders that are invited to pitch their projects. So there needs to be at least 40% women founded companies. And there are specific programs for developing leadership or even financial support, the Women Tech EU initiative. So there's a whole set of measures for innovation.
Okay. Well, one final request from the audience is, can you let us know how we can attend the national trainings you mentioned?
Sure. This will be coming up soon. In my slide, just for the next one, the Romanian one, there is a link that goes to a survey for a call. It's a call for expression of interest.
Okay, we'll make sure to circulate that.
And on our website, that's why I put the last slide for the link to our policy website. That's where you will have updates on the upcoming trainings and how to express your interest to attend this training. The priority there will be for research performing organizations and research funding as well, but those that are targeted by the gender equality plan eligibility criterion. And if there are many applicants, those that do not yet have a gender equality plan. Okay. If there's room left, private for-profit organization could be accepted as well, but it's really now targeting on those institutions covered by the gender equality plan eligibility criterion.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time. I think we're beyond the schedule already, but I would like now to move on to the case study presentations. I would like to start with the Czech Republic, Marcela Linková. She's the head of the Center for Gender and Science at the Institute of Sociology at the Czech Academy for Sciences. Marcela, you have the floor now. I understand you will tell us a bit about your work on gender equality at the Academy of Sciences and what are the main facilitating and hindering factors affecting the implementation of gender equality actions in the Czech Republic. So you have the floor.
Great. Well, good morning, everyone. It's really a pleasure to join today this really important event. And I also want to join my colleagues who have been expressing support for the fight for freedom in Ukraine. We really have to stand strong and support our colleagues. And we must not forget also the very important issue of gender-based violence, which of course is a major issue now in the armed conflict. So I will now go on to my presentation. I will start sharing, and I would like to present. Hopefully I am now in the presentation mode. I would like to present the activities that the Center for Gender and Science at the Institute of Sociology of the Academy of Sciences is doing to support Czech institutions with JEP implementation. I have also included an overview slide for the European policy context, which of course is the background against which we frame all of our activities in the Czech Republic, and has just detailed this, so I will not review it again. But let me just confirm and stress that this is really vital, and it's one of the main facilitating factors to have the EU policy behind what we do. For the Czech policy context, we have actually seen very important developments over the last couple of years. So in 2019, we saw the adoption of a revised national policy for research, development and innovation. And it was the first time that national policy in this area addressed anything related to gender equality. So specifically, it was increasing the quality of research organizations, including the support for HR award and gender equality plans. And then another priority aims to address work-life balance in research. And then even more importantly, in 2021, the government adopted strategy of equality for women and men for this period. And this is really a very ambitious policy. There are more than 24 of measures and indicators with responsibilities assigned for the stakeholders in the field of research and higher education. And so our center is cooperating with the governmental structures to implement this policy. It is also foreseen that the new operational programs will be used to support the implementation. In terms of the policy structures that we have in the country, one very important, of course, with the remit in the field is Ministry of Education, Youth and Sports, which has working group on gender equality. Another one is the Governmental Council for Research, Development, Innovation. This is an advisory body to the government, advising on research and innovation policy. And last year, working group on equality of women and men was set up. This working group has already, in cooperation with our center, developed a methodological support for RFOs, research funding organizations, to implement gender equality actions. We are increasing awareness and developing further methodological materials. One thing that is very pressing at the moment is to address the specific position of researchers and PhD students in the directive on work-life balance, which is being transposed to the country. So this is one very urgent topic that we're dealing with. And the new government, which came into office, established a new ministerial position for research, and the government statement includes women and research and work-life balance as one of their priorities. So we have a very solid policy groundwork now on which to work. Very quickly about the Center for Gender and Science. We were established in 2001. We are research, advocacy, support, and outreach unit, which is dedicated to promoting gender equality in research and higher education. And the three pillars of our activities is to cooperate with the state administration and research funding organizations to support gender equality, then provide support to higher education and research institutions related to gender equality requirements in framework programs. So for the Horizon Europe program, it's primarily gender equality plans. And then also to support the implementation of the European commitments in the ERA. And so up until the end of last year, I was the chair of the Standing Working Group on Gender in Research and Innovation. And now we are in talks with the Ministry of Education in relation to the upcoming new ERA policy agenda. And what I want to present now in a little more detail is the support that we give to institutions in the Czech Republic. We have a community of practice, which we call Community for Change, which brings together people responsible for human resources development or personnel policy or gender equality policy at research and higher education institutions. Today, we have over 400 members, and the goals are to connect people, provide platform for mutual learning and self-reflection related to gender equality actions, diffuse existing knowledge, collect also promising practices from the institution level, create shared contexts for the institutions, and then, of course, also mobilize to generate change in the Czech Republic. To support institutional change, we have also developed a manual on how to achieve change. We have now a third edition, which we continue to update with any development at the EU level. So this is now fully in line with the Horizon Europe requirements. This is publicly available online. We also organize capacity building, advice and consultation activities, and you can see the numbers that we delivered last year. We provide individual consultations to institutions, tailored in-house trainings, but also general trainings at the country level. We now have an infographic on the JEP requirement and the overall eligibility criteria in Horizon Europe in Czech. And I am very proud to mention that we have just learned a public open access e-learning course on JEPs. It was launched at the end of February 2022. We now have 120 subscribers. 56 people have already started the course, and we already have 16 people who passed the course. And we issue certificates of passing of graduation from the course. Another thing that is brand new is that on the occasion of 8th of March, we just launched an awareness raising and educational campaign, which is called One Size Doesn't Fit All, on the gender dimension in research, technology, and innovation. It is aimed both at the research organizations, at researchers, but also at the general public, because we feel that, and we have seen in the past, that this is a topic that really garners huge interest, because this is something that touches all of our lives. And so now we will be publishing a series of articles related to gender and the various aspects related to COVID-19 pandemic, and then we will focus on sustainability. And one last thing that I want to mention for the ERA policy agenda, we are organizing, together with the Ministry of Education, Czech Presidency Conference on Gender-Based Violence in Academia. We, of course, built on the Ljubljana Declaration and the action point in the new ERA policy agenda. The objective is to move forward the policy dialogue and coordination by the trio, and we will be presenting also the initial findings from the UNICEF project. So this will hopefully start the debate. And in conclusion, if I have a few more minutes, I just want to mention the main hindering and facilitating factors for gender equality implementation in the country. I think that very similarly to experience in other countries, we are battling with discursive framings and that go against gender equality, the insistence on excellence and meritocracy, also individualism and individual choice. A woman can choose whether she has children or not, and then there's nothing that prevents her from having a successful career, is a very frequent argument that we hear. We also see the natural course of development, so we don't need to act. We just need to wait for the situation to improve, which our statistics since 2005 show that this argument really is just not true. Then we are battling gender biases against working mothers, but also for leadership among women. But it is necessary to say that we have moved from what we term policy of inactivity, where the responsible stakeholders were looking for arguments not to act, to gender equality being regarded as a necessary evil that we somehow have to comply with, and we are there to support them in this endeavor. And we also have new emerging forms of resistance that we're seeing that are related to the gender balance. We are, as Anne has already mentioned, a country that has one of the lowest proportions of women in research and in grade A, as well as among PhD graduates. And so people in the fields and sectors where the situation is better, for example, medical sciences or the public research sector, governmental sector, are then using the better statistical makeup to argue that we do not need to act in those fields. So we have to find new arguments for this. And then for the facilitating factors, I mean, clearly the EU policy is really one of the most important factors that has kept us on course and allows us to move forward. The second that I want to mention is really the long-term and sustained support from the Ministry of Education, because even if the political will sometimes wanes, with this financial support, we have been able to continue and build expertise. And also we have been able to make use of the fact that there are gatekeepers and pioneers at the helm of institutions, such as, for example, the former president of the Technology Agency of the Czech Republic, who is now in the Governmental Council for Research, Development and Innovation. And she has been really instrumental in pushing the agenda. And then in recent years, we have also seen the mobilization of external stakeholders who are especially early career researchers who are no longer willing to put up with the working conditions that they often have to face at the institutions. So thank you very much for your attention. I hope that some of these experiences can be an inspiration for all of us.
Thank you very much for your presentation. It was really interesting. And I wrote down a couple of questions that I might ask you during the roundtable discussion. And now I'd like to move on to the next presentation. It will be made by Agnė Paliokaitė. She's Associate Professor of Vilnius University. And she will present the main findings of a survey carried out last year by the Women Leaders Association in Lithuania, which looked at opinions of women working in research organizations in the country on gender stereotypes and in their institutions. And it also looked at ways to improve gender equality in research organizations. So, Aurelia, you have the floor.
Hello, good morning. Thank you. And we're really delighted being invited to this really important event. And again, as everyone probably here, before starting, I would like to join those expressing our support to our Ukrainian colleagues, and just using this opportunity just to say that in addition to all things we are doing here in Lithuania and in other countries to support our Ukrainian colleagues, Vilnius University is ready and very open to meet Ukrainian students and our colleagues, researchers. So I do believe you can see my slides, and yeah, so today, unfortunately, Agnė Paliokaitė, my colleague, she was not able to join us, so I will be here alone, but actually we conducted this study together with help with other colleagues. And today I would like to present several aspects of gender equality in science in context of institutional measures that it was mentioned, and to show some things from inside the community where we have quite good statistical indicators, as we just saw in Anne's presentation. So this presentation is based on the study which was initiated by Association Leader and carried out together with Visionary Analytics. And in this study, actually, we had several objectives. We tried to identify key challenges faced by women pursuing their careers in Lithuanian research performing organizations, and in addition to that, to characterize the most relevant institutional measures which could be used for ensuring equal opportunities or gender equality in Lithuanian institutions, research performing institutions. And in addition to all this, we explored impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, but this aspect I will not touch in this presentation. And just to give very brief idea about our methodology, for the survey we used the GM tool. So actually we used already prepared questionnaire, which was developed during the Horizon 2020 ACT project, but edited it for our own purposes. And the study was conducted very recently, I would say, just last summer. And for this study, we contacted personally more than 1,000 of women working in research performing organizations in Lithuania. So actually to those personal invitations, personal by email invitations, 10% of women responded, and in total we had almost 900 of women who shared their opinions, their experiences of working in academic institutions. And in general, this distribution covers PhD students, involve PhD students, professors, lecturers, administrators. So we have very diverse sample, which in general reflects general distribution of women by field of science in Lithuania. So the one thing I would like to draw attention is about stereotypical attitudes in Lithuanian academic community. So in general, there were only 1 out of 10 women, our respondent women, who had never in her academic life faced any stereotypical situation or stereotypical belief which we presented for evaluation, which means that 9 out of 10 women faced at least one of stereotypical belief, attitude, situation. And most frequently, actually 80% of our respondents reported that at least one time in their academic life, they faced the belief that having a child significantly reduces a woman's professional competence and commitment to work. 70% of our respondents reported that they faced situations where women must provide significantly more evidence of her competence in order to be seen as competent as men, and so on and so on. The most striking thing is that more than 10% of our respondents face those situations, face those attitudes at least once a month or even more frequently. Then we asked to evaluate some particular features or characteristics of organizations which relate to gender equality, to implementation or to practicing gender equality in everyday activities. We again found that more than half of our respondents see that in their institutions, men are promoted faster and or easier than women, in addition indeed to some other things. So actually, those frequencies of facing stereotypes, stereotypical situations and beliefs, they are related to field of science. And women working in fields of technological sciences, agriculture, medicine, health, natural sciences, they face those situations more frequently than women working in fields of social sciences, of humanities. Either they face those situations more frequently or they notice those situations more frequently, so they could report high indicators. And in addition to that, we noticed that younger survey participants, they also reported more frequent frequent notices of the stereotypical situations and beliefs. And also women working in academic positions, they meet stereotypical situations more frequently than administrators. But in this context, one particular topic which deserves special attention, and it was already mentioned also by Marcela, is maternity law or maternity penalty. Our study results show that being on maternity leave is a factor which brings negative effects to women's careers. And more than 80% of our respondents reported that they see this factor or they have experience related to maternity leave just as negative factor in their career. Contrarily, having no family responsibilities is seen as bringing positive effects to women's career. But the important thing is that despite there are a lot of other factors like teaching loads, family support, colleague support, and so on and so on and so on. But in general, results of our survey show that institutions, they are not sensitive to women's situations. They are not sensitive, they ignore those issues in general. And it happens so that quite many women, well, maybe not all, but quite many of women who have children, who have families, they appear in quite challenging situations and they are forced to take rather radical decisions. In asking what institutions could do in this situation, under these conditions, we presented a list of 35 institutional measures, asking our respondents to evaluate their relevance to fighting or to resolving the challenges they face. And in general, all evaluations of all measures presented were quite high. Actually, the lowest average evaluations were about, well, more than 6 points out of 10. And what we noticed is that women were more skeptical about such formal measures as formal or organizational plans or formal positions. And in general, women asked for concrete practical actions, for concrete practical measures for resolving their situations. And basing on results of our study, we formulated a set of recommendations for research performing organizations. And those recommendations relate to some particular fields or focus on some particular issues. And indeed, the first and the main set of measures related to reconciliation of work and family balance and ensuring child care and other care responsibilities help to resolve those. And well, again, here are measures which we presented for assessment, and also are measures which were enumerated by women themselves, just providing answers to our open questions. And indeed, those measures should be more elaborated in or tailored to specific particular organizations. So in field related to maternity law, maternity penalty, it would be useful to formalize flexible work schedulers, provide childcare services, enable women to continue their research activities being on maternal leave, and to establish some particular programs, some targeted programs helping women to return after career break. Next field would be related to equal opportunities in the working condition, in the working environment, and indeed here are things of fair distribution of resources, fair pay criteria, and so on. Further, procedures for recruitment, selection, and evaluation also is important issue in Lithuanian research performing organizations. So we would need gender neutral call, selection criteria, recruitment assessment procedures, and so on. And in addition to that, again, field of educational or informational measures. So on the one hand, again, our respondents were slightly skeptical about possibility to fight gender stereotypes, fight bias by using trainings and education. But on the other hand, what was obvious is that in general, we lack knowledge, lack understanding of what is gender equality, we lack gender sensitivity, and we lack information about our organizations, about positioning gender in the organizations and about related issues. So trainings, yes, I'm about to finish. Trainings, collection, analysis, dissemination of the information would be here important. And the last thing which I want to say for finishing is that yes, we presented our survey in national conference for Lithuanian community. And this presentation was followed by discussion with Minister of Science and Education and Sport, and with discussion with leaders, rectors from several Lithuanian universities. So this discussion led provide some optimism and hope that those institutions, universities, they are starting to implement measures, and further we will have more measures. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Now I'd like to move on to the next presentation from Agnė Paliokaitė. She's assistant professor at the National Information Processing Institute in Poland. Anna, please, you have the floor, and I hope we can keep it under 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Florian, and thank you very much for inviting me to today's webinar. It's a pleasure to be here. In the early 20th century, sociologist Renata Siemińska described female scientists in the Polish science sector as winners among losers. And it means that in countries where the public sector is underfunded, women represent the majority because men choose rather better paid positions in the business sector. Siemińska predicted that with increased funding for science, the situation would worsen and women would become losers among winners. And in 2000, actually, women made up an average of 34% in the 15 European Union countries, and in many of the richest economies, the proportion was even lower. And we can see that women's participation in scientific research has been growing for 20 years. There are still differences between countries, but they aren't so striking now, at least when we consider the numbers. If we look at gross domestic expenditure on R&D as a percentage of GDP, and then compare it to the number of female researchers, Poland ranks closer to the richest countries, although our money on science is relatively small. So we should wonder, does it mean that the prophecy from the beginning of the millennium is coming true, and what might happen in the long-term perspective? For over a decade, we have been observing in Poland a continuous reform of the science and higher education sector, and our successive ministers are striving for building a modern European system and making it more and more competitive. In 2018, a law on science and higher education, the so-called Law 200, was introduced, and according to it, we know that the new Polish scientists should carry out research abroad and with foreign partners, publish in top-ranked journals, win money in grant competitions, and cooperate with business. And what is more, we are facing a shift towards a neoliberal audit culture. Both researchers and universities as a whole are regularly evaluated. And again, globally understood excellence is becoming the ultimate goal. And as far as I know, similar actions are also undertaken in other countries of our region. At the same time, the area of gender equality has been neglected at the state level. In this new law, no provision which explicitly addresses inequality between men and women. There are some stop the clock rules, yes, stating that in case of care leaves, time limit for the periodic assessment should be extended by the period of absences. But yeah, this fits with general governmental policy of supporting families. But in my view, it's the absolute minimum, and it's hard to imagine any other rules. So also national funding agencies have some provisions in their internal documents, which of course is promising. And within the Gender Action Project, we've published together with the Ministry of Education and Science a handbook on JEBs for Polish scientific institutions. However, we see that most actions are not top-down, but bottom-up ones, and these include actions undertaken by major universities, NGOs, and civil society organizations. The lack of systemic efforts to ensure gender equality, together with the pressure to achieve ambitious scientific goals and the pursuit of excellence, may create many disadvantages for women. And this phenomenon is also evident in the data. If we compare the proportion, for example, if we compare the proportion of women among full professors, which is a general indicator that's used to build the glass ceiling index, and we see that over time in Poland, the number of academic staff with grade A has increased slightly in comparison to other countries. And indeed, Western Europe started from very low rates, but now is reaching similar shares, mainly as a result of significant improvements at the level of institutions and systems. Even though we know that the glass ceiling index is an imperfect indicator of progress in GE, no doubt holding the professor post is associated with a greater impact on scientific policy. And also in Poland, the share of women in positions of university rectors or head of research institutes and members of decision-making scientific bodies is lower than the EU 27 average. And between 1990 and 2019, only 3 out of 137 rectors' tenures at public universities were filled by women. And a significant change occurred 2 years ago when as many as 12 women won rector elections, including at 2 technical universities and at one of the largest and best universities in Poland, Adam Mickiewicz University in Poznań. However, one may wonder if this is related to the pandemic times. This election was held in line with some research. Women gained crucial positions in difficult periods. We will see. This change is stable. Anyway, we have still low numbers of women at the highest positions. What is important, if we realize that in Anglo-Saxon systems, prestige and money come primarily from research, and in Europe, in general, high earnings stem from high-level administrative functions. So the lack of women leads to unjust hierarchies and power structures. It is also, of course, linked to money, this question of power structures. So women are a minority in fields which are crucial to economic and social development, according to the so-called field status paradox. When the status of a field is low, women will be found in large numbers. In Poland, this is particularly visible in the sector of information and telecommunication technologies, which offers better salaries and more promising career opportunities. And while among all doctoral graduates, women account for 56%, among ICT graduates, it's only 13%. Yeah, and it's the same situation in the ICT business sector. A similarly low proportion of women are employed as researchers. And this is the confirmation, it might be a confirmation of the thesis that there is a positive correlation between the innovation index and the gender equality index. Yeah, it's important to mention that in both these indices, Poland ranks among the last in Europe. In one of our studies conducted on scientists in Poland, we found that there are no differences between men and women when it comes to conducting international research and international cooperation, which is equated with excellence. And also the She Figures report shows that gender gap in terms of number of publications and number of projects is smaller in Poland than in other countries. But on the other hand, for my PhD, I've carried out biographical research among female professors in the technoscience fields, yeah, and the conclusion is that women simply conform to the male criterion of excellence. Yeah, scientific identity is stronger than gender identity. So Polish female researchers recognize determination and perseverance as a key success factor. Yeah? So they pursue this male ideal of excellence, but bear much higher costs. And in the article mentioned at the beginning about women in science as winner among losers, Szymińska stated that female academics can easily reconcile doing science with family duties, yeah? That they choose this job because of good work-life balance. So today the situation is dramatically different, yeah? And according to another of our research, in general, young scientists don't achieve work-life balance, and in almost every indicator, women score significantly lower than men. And what is more, balancing is particularly complicated for mothers, much higher than for fathers. So gender equality plans are now being developed in large number of at various Polish institutions, yeah, not only at major universities, but also, for example, the institutes of applied research. So I hope that they will help to answer this fundamental question, how to pursue scientific excellence, strengthen diversity, and ensure equal opportunities for minority groups, and reach all these goals in a sustainable way. Yeah? So we should work to provide academics with favorable working conditions and environment in which everyone can realize full potential. So I hope we can talk more about this during the panel discussion. So maybe finally, of course, I would like to express my support and Polish support for Ukrainian women and men who fight with Russian invaders, yeah, and I think that we are brutally convincing how important European values are. So we see that gender equality is worth defending because human rights are worth defending. So thank you for your attention, and Slava Ukraini.
Thank you, Anna, for your presentation. And indeed, we will tackle the question, your final question in the debate, shortly after we hear from Slovakia. So I would like to introduce now Gabriel Bianchi. He's a Deputy Director at the Institute for Research in Social Communication at the Slovak Academy of Sciences. And he also has a brief presentation on the gender equality plan the Academy has been preparing. So please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. I would like to start with the sort of political support for Ukraine, of course, and in the light of the topic which we solving here or treating here, gender equity. I would like to express that from my point of view, this is sort of treating a problem which is about unfairness, about breaking human rights, on equity, and more or less it's a problem that is generally perceived as a creepy problem, yeah, in the society, compared to the life-threatening problem we have in Ukraine. So it's really a big difference between these two issues. But I would like to show you in my presentation at the end also that life-threatening motives can be applied also in the gender equality arena. And I will give you an example how it really worked in our case. So I'm proud to be member of the international project Athena Horizon 2020, which has the main purpose to develop and implement gender equality plans for research performing and research funding organizations, mainly in East European, but also in some Western European countries. You will see the list of the countries in one of the slides, of the partners of the project in one of the slides. In my title, there is in brackets a road movie, because actually the issues that we have experienced during the first year and something of this project is very similar to being part of making a movie. So this is just to show you the complexity of the preparatory phase in preparing a gender equality plan. In our institute, in the Slovak Academy of Sciences, we were responsible for work package 2, which was for the basis on the gender assessment and staff survey and assessment of the legal provisions in the country and in the research and innovation arena, and also producing a complex, a very huge gender equality report from the whole project, from the 6 participating countries who developed gender equality plan within this consortium. Here you can see the identity of the partners that are in black letters. The red letters are either consultants or research funding organizations in the project with the coordinator Consulta Europa. I will not repeat what is written on this slide because it was already told by Anne Pepin that there are 4 mandatory requirements for a gender equality plan, and there are 5 thematic areas. And it's very important if someone is thinking about preparing a gender equality plan to have these 4 and 5 points in your mind from the very beginning, because each can get into a tricky situation if you want to fulfill all these 9 points. But I will not go in detail. If you would have questions in the discussion, I want to keep the time. Here on this slide, again, you have the methodology for the gender audit, which we performed in the first phase. So it was a sort of desk research. And then further on, there were also approaches that were in-depth interviews, individual interviews, focus group discussions, and the legal frame assessment. What is the outcome of the desk research, of the desk gender audit in the Slovak Academy of Sciences and in our partner countries is showing this table just one indicator about the leaky pipelines. We can see that actually in all the participating countries, we have sort of leaky pipeline situation, let's say maybe with the exception of Romania, of the University of Bucharest, where we have seen in the previous presentation already that in Romania they have a very high percentage of the high degree women in research, the full professorship. Maybe it's for the whole country it's even higher. At the Bucharest University, it was 43%. But in all the other member partner universities, you can see the leaky pipeline effect. which is most crucial at the level of the A-grade women researchers. We call it A-grade and not full professorship because, for example, for our Academy of Sciences, the crucial position is the Doctor of Sciences and not only the professor, because that's a degree equal to the professor, but in a non-teaching position. And also in the management for research and innovation, you can see very low figures of women participation. So it really, the leaky pipeline is here, and it needs some fixing. Sorry. Yes. Now we can see the slide with which gives an overview of all the documents that need to be assessed, analyzed and assessed for the report if you are preparing a gender equality plan. And all of these documents were really analyzed. The international, the national legislation, and any special institutional documents that serve the final goal of gender equity. This slide is more exciting because it shows the three categories of possible regulation for gender equity policies. They could be this could be regulated in a separate national strategy or action plan for gender equity in research. And we could find this one only in our Spanish partner. Neither of the European partners in our project had this kind of document in the country. So then it could be gender equity in research and higher education as part of overall gender equity strategy. And this is actually present in almost all the countries. But then there is the third possibility, which is most specifically addressing the issue. And that's the case when gender equity is reflected in the national strategy for research and innovation. For example, for Slovakia, there is an absence of this in the third column, because we even don't have a working strategy yet since more than 5 years in the country. So it's a serious failure. But we of course, there cannot be a gender equity reflected in it if the document does not exist. But there are other countries who have this document, of course, but the gender equity is not reflected in it, addressing directly the environment of research and higher education. Here there are two slides which I will not read because you can have them later on if you would be interested. This is about the methodology which we use to collect data in a direct survey to researchers in the universities participating in the project. So this is the first slide, and now come two more slides about the individual interviews. How was the individual interview with the researchers structured, and how the focus groups, this is the semi-structured scenario for the focus group discussions to get more deep insight into the issues of gender equity, gender non-equity, and conditions for improvement in the partner organization. So performing all these research and data collection actually served to formulate a good starting point for writing the gender equality plan. And I'm showing you only one slide of some of the selected results from the gender audit, from the overall methodology summarized in one slide. So the first is that there is still an ambivalency in perceiving the issues of gender equity among the academicians in the Slovak Academy of Sciences. There was a lot of support for gender equality activities, of course, but there is a lot of ambivalent reflections, reactions, mainly supported by a very conservative traditional culture, stressing the importance of male and female stereotypes for family life, etc., etc., for merging private and public life, etc., etc. So this is a signal for a need for really a cultural change, and then for an institutional change, which cannot run fast. Then we have the very strong leaky pipeline situation in the Slovak Academy of Sciences, but we could find also a very tiny but positive, and I think quite important positive signal when we analyzed the first authorship in a scientific publication of the highest ranks. And we found that if we compared the ratio of women to men as first authors to the overall number, to the overall ratio of women and men among authors, so the indicator was always above 1. So it means women more frequently are first authors of the most excellent publications than they are just authors of the publications. The size of the indicator was different in different areas of sciences. In the earth sciences, it was highest. In the life sciences, it was lower. It was the lowest in the social and humanities sciences, but still it was above 1. So in any of the scientific groups, the ratio of women as first authors was higher than the ratio of women as authors in general. We have to go deeper into this. It raised a lot of discussion among the researchers in our Academy of Sciences. We do not know exactly the real reasons for that, but statistically, this indicator is on the table. What we identified as challenges in the pipeline, in the leaky pipeline problem, there is really the question of possibilities for promotion in the area of research institutions, which are very slow-running legal bodies with very low awareness of need to change. So there are many issues that need to be challenged in order to create conditions for repairing the leaky pipeline. Especially with the highest, the A-grade positions, because with the postponement of reproduction, very often women get their children only after their PhD degree, and then the fight for, let's say, for the striving for the further career begins, and then the young women have responsibility for the family, and matching work and life issues is then getting extremely important, creating institutional conditions for optimizing the matching of work and life balance. And also there is a glass ceiling index in several areas, and as I mentioned, not only in the scientific degrees and the A degrees, but also in the management, where we have very low figures. You can see we have only 20% of women in the so-called presidency, but this is actually the government of the Academy of Sciences, which is above 54 institutes of the Academy. And we have also only 13.6% women in the Scientific Council of the Slovak Academy, which is the highest scientific body for our institution. This is the last slide. You can see some suggestions which are on this slide. I will not read them. If you would allow to have some questions, I'm ready to discuss them. But I would like to focus on the 4 suggestions for implementation of the gender equality plan. Also, the project Athena, on behalf of which I'm talking here, is mainly spending most of its time, 3 years out of the 4 years, on the implementation of the gender equality plan, because only the first year was for preparation for the gender audit and preparation of the gender equality plan. So a minority part of the project. So our feeling is that we really need to think about small steps for the implementation, and someone could call it also low expectations. I would not call it low expectations, but simply the doses that we are going to ask for the institutional change has to be weighted on pharmaceutical scales, and working with all the traditional and working institutes, committees, power structures, etc., etc. The second recommendation or suggestion is concerning personal engagement and responsibility, and finally in commitment. It's extremely important to try to develop a network of persons, of participants in this procedure who really develop their personal engagement, who really feel their personal responsibility, and who can create around them, so let's say, islands of positive influence and network for change. Yeah? I would say networking for change. And it's also about the evolutionary principle. We know that cooperation was the crucial quality humankind, thanks to our development from the prehistoric time to the current time. So cooperation is absolutely crucial, and finding liaisons, finding people who support each other and expand the mission is, I think, absolutely crucial. The third thing is visibility and presence. One example is that, for example, the gender equality plan, which was formally approved by the Presidium of the Academy of Sciences in December last year, is not at the front web page of the Slovak Academy of Sciences. You will not find a button. Here is the gender equality plan. It's public. It is in the second screen if you get into documents. So under documents, you can find the gender equality plan. But in my view, a higher visibility is required. We had a discussion on this already. And I hope very much that making it visible also will help to make it more present. And addressing the hierarchy of importance of issues in management is also very, very important. And this concerns the very low rate of women participation in the management of science. In our case, that's the Presidium of the Academy, where there is a very low number of women in this organ, in this institution. The last comment I will get back, and I will close this, is the issue of the life-threatening message. And I must say very openly that the willingness to support the preparation of the gender equality plan for the Slovak Academy of Sciences, which, according to our project Athena, should have been submitted for discussion in the Presidium in June this year, was extremely accelerated in late autumn last year, because many institutes got aware of the requirement that having gender equality plan in place is a requirement for being funded from the from Europe Horizon Europe. Yeah? So there was a pressure from bottom, from the institutes to the presidium, because it was sort of feeling being life-threatened. We will not be able to submit our proposals to the calls to Brussels, and therefore they exercised a big pressure on the presidium, which asked us as partners in the Athena project to deliver the gender equality plan 6 months in advance, and we did it, and so now we have it in place. So really, life-threatening motivations can also sometimes help in gender policies. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for your presentation. I'd like to, we're running out of time already, so I'd like to start a bit of a discussion around what we've heard so far. I would like to invite you all to raise your hands and unmute yourselves to respond. And we've heard a few things, especially around the gender equality differences in different fields. So we have more men working in technology, engineering, and mathematics, and more women working in educational studies or social sciences. One question is, what can research institutions do to increase the number of women, to attract more women to study and work in these hard sciences, or other areas where there's still a low percentage of women graduating or working? Who wants to take on that question? No one?
No, maybe I can say
yeah, sure.
a few
go
words.
ahead.
Yeah, from the perspective of the ICT entity, because my institute, the National Information Processing Institute, hires both researchers from different fields and ICT specialists, like developers and engineers. So we build computer systems and create software for the science and higher education sector. So we need those specialists also. And actually in Poland, there is a growing number of women graduating from technical universities, but it is also a question of incorporating broader fields of study into technical education. Because every year we, together with the Foundation Perspective, we prepared the report on female students on polytechnics, and for many years this the rate of girls participation has been stable. It's about 35%. But if we consider particular study programs, it's an unchanging phenomenon that even at technical universities, the programs dominated by women aren't technical. It's for instance, it's pedagogy. So I think that it's a problem, and I think that maybe first of all we should fix the institutions, and combat this chilly climate there, because we know that we as women are more likely than men to being ostracized, especially from male colleagues, especially at these technical entities, and we know also that women are more likely to leave the innovation sector because of this bad climate. So I think that that we should create such an environment in which everyone feels comfortable. So it's the first issue, and secondly, there is a need, and we do that in our institute, to change the overall narrative. In the case of job adverts, web pages, and so on. That research shows that when the information stresses that being a programmer, a developer requires such skills as being well organized or some planning skills, women are more likely to choose these studies, and so maybe these actions are needed, and one other phenomenon that it's visible that even in new technologies area, the chance might be interdisciplinarity, because for instance in Poland at public technical universities, biomedical engineering is particularly popular among women. So maybe to attract more women, it's a question, even a positive use of stereotypes, that may be showing some good practices and projects run by women in which data is translated into some social applications and social good. It's also a way to encourage women, but of course fixing system and fixing institutions should be crucial actions.
Okay, so how can we fix institutions? I see a number of hands raised. Who wants to go first? I think we'll, Marcela, would you like to go first?
I can. I was going to comment on the former question, because in the Czech Republic, we can also see a growing proportion of women studying technical fields and natural sciences. So the issue, continues, but is lesser now on the intake or supply side. But what continues to be an issue is how the organizations are working. And so I think it is really vital to realize that the JEP requirement and the institutional change has several components, and one of them is cultural or symbolic. And I think that in the technical and natural sciences, this is really a vital component of the institutional change that needs to happen. And Anna has already mentioned that, the chilly climates and the biases. And I think that similar to Poland, in the Czech Republic, we see this compounded by the neoliberal reforms with very unsuitable systems of research assessment and requirements related to the research careers. And so I think that what the JEP requirement and the way we conceptualize now institutional change in the EU is the way forward. The attention really must shift to the institutions and how they work. And the JEP requirement is, I think, the main instrument that we have at the moment.
Mm-hmm. I see another hand raised. Baha? Yes. Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I do. Thank you very much. I'm from Poznań University of Economics and Business, and I'm the professor here and also rector of Proxy for Equal Treatment. And I would like to agree that indeed preparing gender equality plan was like a life-threatening situation, but according to gender equality plan that was prepared at our university, it occurred that the situation in the perspective of gender equality is quite positive, I would say, because the numbers of women among professors were quite close to each other. Maybe between full professors, there was invisible gender inequality, but when I was comparing, because I was the author of this plan, comparing the situation was changing gradually, and I hope that it will change very soon. And I would like to stress that what is important at any institution, this top-bottom approach. So it means that the person who is a rector, a director, CEO, implements gender equality solutions, yes, because our rector told us that he assumed that he wanted parity between rectors, because as he was a vice rector, he cooperated only with men, and he assumed that 2 rectors must be women, yes, and I would say that this is crucial thing, yes, to notice that we have challenge and just to try to implement this, yes. And I would like also to say a few words because I prepared a guidebook how to respond to sexual harassment. So I will publish this the link to this. It is in English.
Let me stop you right there. I think we can go back to this, circle back to this issue. I have a couple of questions prepared on that. But until then, I would like to give the floor to Anne from the Commission. I see her hand is raised, and
yes, thank
she has a comment.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Sorry, thank you. Yes, I don't think I need to insist more on the fact that indeed what we're seeing now, what has started, is really hopefully a game changer, this new gender equality plan eligibility criterion. But I'd like to come back to your first question on women in technical fields, just to underline that the Commission adopted a European strategy for universities, in which one of the clear actions that have to be addressed is the underrepresentation of women in STEM, in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, through a roadmap of activities, including a manifesto of STEM-focused research organization and businesses, and STEAM-focused education. So also what was mentioned, introducing arts, creative thinking, and putting STEM fields into their social, cultural context. So this is something that we'll be developing, and also underline that Commissioner Gabriel on the 8th of March has launched a new campaign called She You Leads, which is will be featuring throughout the year. It's a follow-up to the EU Women for Future campaign, featuring women researchers, in general, young researchers, and particularly in those underrepresented STEM fields.
Thank you. I have another question on the maternity wall. A lot of you talked about this, and already I think you mentioned that institutions should come up with scholarships and integration programs for maternity leaves. And I wonder, and it's a question to all of you actually, which countries and institutions already do that? And you know, what steps have been taken so far in ensuring that, you know, women researchers have the flexibility needed to continue working after having a child? Aurelia, I think you mentioned this in your presentation. I don't know if what's the situation in your country?
Yes, of course, I mentioned, and I just tried to recall exact institutions which has different practices focused on this. For example, kindergarten for university lecturers, or I think it's South Denmark University. They have some measures for women and also for men returning from paternity leave, and I do not remember proportions, but I guess it is like if you spend if you had break longer than 6 months, then you have some lower requirement for teaching. So you would have more time for research or something. But to my knowledge, in Lithuania, we just starting working on resolving those issues. And for example, Vilnius University, they started establishing children's rooms for university workers. And for example, in library, they have room where students and also researchers, they may leave their children and just watch them playing and focus on work. And also we had I think a long time initiative in Šiauliai University, which is now part of Vilnius University. I think it was in 2005 they started project Family Planet. So they tried to make university family-friendly university.
Right.
Establish all facilities. Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else wants to comment on this issue? Yes, Thomas.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, kind of a side comment on the at the maternity leaves, and it's just something that comes out to my mind after the meeting we have had yesterday with a number of the stakeholders. We were discussing the simplifications in Horizon Europe, and I'm very glad that Anne is still here. So just trying to convey the message, one of the messages that we've heard yesterday. So as you know, the Commission is, will be widely rolling up the lump sum methodology in the lump sum the deployment of the Horizon Europe. One of the issues that we have heard yesterday was that the actually, experiencing and maternity breaks in the grants run in the using the lump sum methodology is a kind of obstacle that at the moment is very difficult to actually be managed. So I think this is one of the keys that Commission could actually take on board and to try to, somehow integrate it within the policies that are actually being developed and deployed by the Commission. So just this sort of a comment that this is yet another thing that Commission could do to help to deploy and to make the maternity leaves as smooth as possible using the grants funded by the Horizon Europe. So thanks.
Right, that's a very interesting point. I've been covering lump sums, the rollout of lump sums, but I never thought of this potential side effect. It's very interesting. So I'm sure Anne will take note of this and share it with her colleagues. Okay, Marcela, you had a question?
No, I just wanted to add what we're seeing in the Czech Republic is that universities and research institutions are setting up their own kindergartens or nurseries or children's groups because of the lack of public childcare facilities, especially in the large towns and cities of Prague and Brno, where a majority of universities and research institutes of the academy are located. And then one thing that we're currently addressing with the governmental council is the use of grant funding to cover costs of childcare. For example, when you have a researcher who goes on to a conference and she needs to cover babysitting, for example, while she's in the conference. So this is something that we're trying to find a way how to address in our law. It might require legislative change, but we're definitely working with the research funders to see how that could be incorporated. And what another thing that we're trying to push are return grants for researchers who are returning after a career break for childcare. But we recently had a very discouraging discussion with one of our funders, and their argument is that this could be abused by the research teams. So the level of mistrust against institutions and returning mothers is something that was very surprising for me, I have to say, in this conversation.
Anna, you want to follow up on that?
Yeah, maybe it's an anecdotal example, yeah, but a few years ago, one of the Polish science funders was awarding grants to scientists who returned after maternity and or paternity leaves, yeah, and in the review process, the publication breaks were scored negatively, yeah, so finally the money went to people without breaks. And the goal of the whole project was lost. Yes, so I think, of course, the rules have been corrected, but we should treat it as a warning that even the best ideas can be distorted. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Okay. One follow up. I think it's a related question. It's somewhat related to this. I mean, you're all most of you, as far as I can see, in this meeting are women working in academia. So. On the issue of fair pay, is that still a problem? I see a few nods. Yes, and Yeah, I'm just wondering in the context of these gender equality plans, which are kind of being developed because the Commission has been asking research organizations to develop them. What should national governments do to actually implement the principles that are set in these gender equality plans and enhance inclusiveness in research institutions? And this includes all the things we've discussed so far: pay, maternity leaves, opportunities, and so on. Who wants to take that on? Marcela, yes.
Well, one simple answer, I think, would be to learn from Ireland, because I think that they have an extremely robust system at the moment, promoted by the Higher Education Authority, and they are moving toward, in fact, evaluating the impact of gender equality plans at the institutional level. Also, and mentioned 2 projects that will be funded under the calls of last year. And so we are in process of completing the negotiations of the Gender Action Plus project, which should start as of 1st of June. And we will be looking into coordinating the JEP requirements across the member states. So this is definitely something that I hope we will be able to push forward in the coming years, months and years.
Okay. Any other comments on this issue, on what member states, what governments should do to implement more broadly the plans? And
maybe,
yeah.
Yes, maybe in addition to what Marcela just said, indeed, in Ireland, the research funders are requesting that applicants, like we do in Horizon Europe, have a thinnest one, so a special type of award or certification scheme to be allocated funding. But there are also in other countries, and I'm thinking of France, for example, where the ministry requests that all public academic and research organizations have a gender equality plan in place in order to receive funding by the ministry. So, and actually to comply with law, that's a law. So this is an example.
Okay, well, thank you very much to all. Unfortunately, we have to end here. I would like to thank you all again for joining us today for this debate. Now I would like to give the floor quickly to Tomasz Poprawka. He's the director of the Polish Science Contact Agency in Brussels, for the concluding remarks. So thank you very much all for participating.
Yes,
you. Bye-bye.
Indeed, Florin, thanks to everyone involved today in this very interesting, very promising and inspiring event. At least this is how I take it. I mean, it's just great to see so many of you coming together to learn from each other, to exchange the ideas. And I think this is very important, that we are able to create the conditions and create a platform and a space to discuss on issues related to gender equality and beyond, especially in the situation which we are in today, with clearly thinking of a very dramatic situation of our peers in Ukraine. Nevertheless, I think this might be actually something clearly a game changer in a general and horizontal way. But discussing about policies like this can be also very beneficial to actually help and implement and deploy help to the female scientists fleeing Ukraine and seeking help. For the final words, I would also like to thank Anne and all the presenters today. Thank you very much for your contribution and sharing, and I think this is very useful for our audience. And speaking of which, also thank you very much for coming and spending these past 2 hours with us. thank you very much. And the last but not least, I would also like to thank to everyone involved in the team, in the teams working to really deliver that event for you, and particularly colleagues at the LINO office, Julia, thumbs up, and colleagues in the SLORD, which is Slovak office, Monica is there, and Denisa at the CZELO office, and also to my colleague at the PolSCA, Magdalena, who was involved in the whole preparation of that event. I can't see Brigitta, and our dear friend from the LINO office, but also a very thumbs up to her for her contributions to the event. So thank you very much. And Florin, thanks to you, clearly, for having.
Thank you all. Thank you very much. It was really a pleasure.
For engaging. And I wish you, well, a good afternoon. And, let's try to work together on, implementing the gender equalities. And we can do whatever we can nowadays and in the days, weeks, and probably months to come to provide help and a sort of a supporting hand to everyone at risk and in need currently in those terrible days in Europe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.